What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's do a little thing we like to call the Middlekauff Mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire into those DMs. Get your questions answered here on the show. Before I dive into your questions, Trent Baalke was fired probably about a little less than an hour after I'm recording this. It's been a rough stretch in society for career politicians. And I think Baalke finally got because for a guy that, I think when you meet him and, the way he came up, he was like this old school grinder tape scout. There is no disputing his greatest quality working in the NFL has been his ability to get in with owners. Jed York loved him. When he got fired from the 49ers, before he got hired with the Jags, he worked for the league office. So he was in with Raj and company. And then when he got hired with Shad Khan, he has been in control with several coaches. And it looked like he was getting another. So to think this guy, who again, I have nothing against him over, not that I'm friends with him or anything, but in my interactions over the years, he's been fine to me. But he has a skill. And it is an elite skill. I know I'm not a great politician. It's really hard for me. It's hard for me to fake things. And I think when most of us say the word politician, we think a complete phony, a complete fraud. They'll just say whatever they have to say. And in any industry you work in, especially those of you in bigger companies where you have a lot of different levels of management, we've all been around them, right? That play the game, that know what they're doing. And there's one thing to have that and be talented. It's actually a really good skill to have when you're also good at your job. But I think we can question whether Trent Baalke knows what he's doing. And he's had hits and he's had a lot of misses. But one thing he's great at, when shit hits the fan, it's like he can avoid it and everyone else gets taken out. And I think it's pretty clear. And by the time you're listening, there might be actual stories out about this. Is for whatever reason, the cons, I think in a perfect world, just want to hire a GM, hire a coach, run the team, and just make us competitive. We just want to go to some games, make a bunch of money. Like, we're not going to tell you what plays to run, what players to pick. Just do it, please. And I think he was praying Baalke was like that, and he could find another coach. And it's pretty clear that Shad Khan, like all these guys are saying no to him. And who's saying no to him is not Ben Johnson. It's not Bill Belichick, right? This is like coordinators that don't have other options. And eventually you pick up the horn. That used to be a call to phone for those of us old enough to remember that were plugged in to a wall at your house where you had these things called house phones. Those don't really exist anymore. So you pick up your cell phone or you either call or you text the coaching agents and you go, what's the deal? Can you help me out? Help me help you? Because those agents want to be in with the owners. And there's no doubt in my mind, he said, listen, my client likes the opportunity you provide and would be interested in being your head coach, but he would rather jump off the Golden Gate Bridge than have to work with Trent Baalke. He's not going to do it. Even these people that don't know him, all they're going to know is this guy's a politician, and the moment things go wrong, he will stick a knife in your back and then slit your throat. So it's like, I'm not hitching my wagon. Liam Cohen reports are that he just re-signed with Tampa Bay for about $4.5 million a year. And I've said it forever. The NFL is Wall Street on grass. There is not a better business to be in right now to be coaching than the National Football League and really college football. I mean, Chip Kelly's making $2.5 million. How many people and how many industries of people listening to this do you know that the guy that is not the head honcho, who's not at the top of the org chart, he doesn't own anything, he has little to no responsibility in terms of big decision making. He's not a decision maker. Now, being a coordinator is a big deal, but there is no decision making in terms of roster, in terms of when guys get in trouble, with terms of punishment. You don't have to deal with the owner a lot of the times in terms of like on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And you're making $3, $4, $5 million. It's an incredible gig to have. Listen, I understand being a head coach, much more famous. You get to make the decisions, you make more money, But if you're telling me that the number twos, and there are multiple number twos like the DC and the OC, are getting paid between $2 and $5 million and don't have responsibility when shit hits the fan, they're not getting sued or anything. Uh, they don't have to pay people. It's an incredible. It's one of the greatest gigs in the history of America currently to be an offensive or defensive coordinator in the NFL, especially if you're good at it. Pays a premium. But Liam Cohen returns. Like I would imagine he goes, well, why wouldn't Liam Cohen want this job? Now, I think you could also make the argument like if you're Liam Cohen, you're already in Florida. What's he going to pay you? A couple $1 million extra? Stay with Baker. I can get a better job than that. But, Baalke, he mentioned it during the final press conference too when asked if you have a coach that does not want to work with Trent, would you at least acknowledge that you might have to do something here with Trent Baalke, and would you fire him? And I forget his exact the way he phrased it, but he basically said, yeah. It was a very awkward moment because Trent, who's just always in great shape, he looks good in a polo or a suit or whatever. He's sitting there right next to Shad, who's at his home office, probably some mansion in Palm Beach, and it was like, whoa, but what's Trent gonna say? And then he ends up getting fired. So wouldn't shock me at all if Trent Baalke's a GM for another team someday. I mean, don't ever put it past a great elite politician is never dead. Promise you. It's just if you've been alive long enough, those fucking people are leeches, and this guy is great at it. I was wondering why NFL head coaches are not paid more in relation to players. Aside from the quarterback, its most important role on the team. Yet even elite head coaches don't make much more money than mid-level players. And since their pay isn't affected by the salary cap, it just strikes me as odd. I tend to agree. You could argue that coaches and the top GMs are severely underpaid based on the industry they're in, right? They are, I think you could argue some position coaches are somewhat overpaid, right? If I have a good DB coach and he's making 850, could I get the same thing for 400 grand? But again, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's use Kevin O'Connell as an example, and I've been critical of him. But if they fired Kevin O'Connell yesterday, in what world could they replace Kevin O'Connell with another Kevin O'Connell? It'd be higher than, I'd say, 50, 60, 70% chance whoever they hired would not work, right? So he just gets a raise. Let's just pick a number. $14 million. He was making seven. Let's say he doubled his income. I think Schefter thought it'd be somewhere between 12 to 14. So even if he's making 12. Well, Justin Jefferson's making 30. His quarterback technically because Darnold and J.J. McCarthy. But let's say his highest paid player is making 30. You're telling me Kevin O'Connell's not worth 20? Look at Caleb Williams. Oh, this guy's going to change the league. They draft him. He's terrible. I mean, he has just not a very good rookie year relative to the hype. So, Andy Reid. What's Andy Reid worth to the Chiefs? Let's just pick a number. They're paying him $18 million right now. Well, if Mahomes is worth 50, which obviously it's impossible to replace Mahomes. And like you said, no one has a problem with the quarterback making more than the coach. If Clark Hunt had to pick this offseason, Travis Kelce or Andy Reid, what's he picking? Andy Reid. There is not a player. Chris Jones would be tough, but I could find another Chris Jones. I can't find another Andy Reid. Andy Reid should be making probably $40 million. What's Sean McVay worth? I mean, seriously, what is Sean McVay worth to the Rams? Now, listen, I remember when I lived in Philadelphia, they were having this big, they were really building up the baseball team, and Cole Hamels was about to be a free agent. It's like if he hits free agency, he might make $170, $180 million. And they put, I think the contract he signed when I first moved there was like $125 million. I remember someone on the radio going, can you imagine saying like, I'm going to ride this out to get $175 million. And then someone puts $120 million in front of you. What are you going to do? Not sign it? It's my argument with Purdy. It's like, hey, Brock, here's 3 years, $120 million, 100 guaranteed. This is our contract. You don't have to sign it, but you can also we'll just play next year for $1 million. What's he going to do? Why doesn't that happen more in sports? It happens to us in business all the time. Don't get it. Honestly, I don't understand why it doesn't happen. I get with the Josh Allens, the Joe Burrows, the Patrick Mahomes, even the Justin Jeffersons and the CD Lambs, but I don't think it happens with the second and third tier players enough. It happens with coaches, and they usually like, hey, Sean, here's a 5 year contract, $15 million a year. Reality is Sean McVay's worth double that, but what's he going to do? Not sign a $75 million contract? What was Saban worth to Alabama? They were paying him 10. It's like, God, Saban makes so much money. Saban was worth probably $50 million to them. With all these coaching interviews happening, I'm seeing parts and articles that say so and so is also a candidate and is compliant with the Rooney Rule. How pathetic do you think the minority feels going into these interviews knowing they are potentially just being interviewed solely because this rule states that they have to interview a minority? Can we just go back to interviewing and hiring candidates that are just qualified? Why bring race into it? Curious to hear your thoughts. Well, I think part of it is for a long time, the NFL disproportionately black, right? And the coaching staffs were the same thing. And then the coaches, the head coaches, which pay way more, this goes back to decades, were heavily white guys. This is my argument. Like everyone's making so much money now. Like no one, in my experience in football, I've never heard race come up. Like only working in the media are people obsessed with it. When you work in football, I never heard it come up. When it came to coaching, when it came to players, when it came to interacting, and I spent 5 years every single day around players and coaches. Now, to get the shot as a head coach, you obviously it helps to become an offensive coordinator. That's why they've pushed, to give guys opportunities with, in those type roles, especially quarterback coaches. But like the Jets hired Aaron Glenn because Aaron Glenn was a good candidate. Period, point blank, end of story. Aaron Glenn could have been fucking purple. He was a no-brainer hire for them. It's always my issue with like the Pats want to hire Mike Vrabel. It's like, why do I have to? Why do I can't remember who they brought in? Byron Leftwich. And now sometimes you're bringing them in for a head coaching interview. Who turns down a head coaching interview? Plus, you get to know the owner. Maybe he pushes you to the staff and you become the offensive coordinator, which obviously didn't happen with Byron Leftwich. But I hear you. I mean, some of these interviews are a complete sham, are just an absolute complete sham. Now, back in the day, I think you would say Mike Tomlin on its surface was a sham. Then he becomes a head coach, and 18 years later, he's probably made $100 million. So, I mean, you never know. But I'm with you. I remember the Raiders got in trouble for hiring John Gruden. To me, the rule would be if you've won a Super Bowl, I don't have to follow any fucking rules. I can hire whoever I want to hire, right? And I just think these are the rules. I think the NFL has been very hesitant, changing that. Now, you just look at the way society's heavily changing, all the Fortune 500 companies just getting rid of all the requirements. I don't think the NFL is going to pivot here. But, I think we saw the Eric Bieniemy thing become like a media talking point for years. And I've never met the guy, but all my guys in Kansas City really liked him. But, I think there's, for whatever reason, people were just hesitant to hire him, not because he was black. Like, I'll promise you that. Then he gets a job in Washington, and it does not go well. And it's like, okay, it's the Commanders. Team wasn't that good. Then he goes to UCLA and he gets fired by Deshaun Foster. Fired. Now, I know his agent puts out this was bullshit. He was fired. I was told that reliably. And he big brothers him. He's a big brother. No, he was the offensive coordinator, wouldn't listen, and Deshaun Foster fired him. So, and listen, that conversation has already died. But like, I have a hard time with when I know who I want to hire, I have to interview other people. If you have certain requirements, you could argue if you've been a head coach before. Like, do I need to do the Rooney Rule if I want to hire Pete Carroll? You mean a guy that's been a coach at 3 different teams, won multiple national championships, and been to multiple Super Bowls with a Super Bowl championship? Why couldn't I just hire Pete Carroll? Why do I have to wait? But those are the rules. So I just don't think it's going to change, no matter how much society is heavily shifting. And again, I can't speak for owners. I've never owned an NFL team. I've never met anyone who gives a shit about like I just want to hire the best coach. And whether that's a white guy, whether that's a black guy, are you good? Because I've seen, you can find bad ones in every version. You can find great ones in every version. That's the thing with coaching. Like you can go to Division 2, you can go to Division 1, you go to the NFL. Like there are good and bad coaches. Just there are better coaches in Division 2 than some in the NFL. And I'm talking about assistants and stuff. But the other thing is like so much now is about who's your agent. Like, is Marcus Freeman a good coach? Like, because he's black or white? No, he's just a good coach. Like, he's just good. Played in college, played a little in the NFL. He's just natural with people. You see it, right? Marcus Freeman just lost to Ryan Day. I know this. If I had to hire one of those two guys for the next 5 years to run my program, I wouldn't even hesitate. I would hire Marcus Freeman. Wouldn't even cross my mind. If I was an NFL team, Marcus Freeman, I'd hire tomorrow over Ryan Day. You're like, Middlekauff, you're just an Ohio State hater. He won the national championship. Well, yeah, he's got a fucking $20 million payroll and get anyone into school. Give me Marcus Freeman all day long. God, I wanted Notre Dame to win that game. NFL playoffs. We're talking about the NFL playoffs. You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is a key to winning in the NFL playoffs. And the key to you scoring big is betting on them at DraftKings, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something as simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Here's another reason to watch your favorite players crush it in the playoffs. New customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big during the NFL playoffs with the DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code JOHN, J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Reaching out for the mailbag for your restaurant recommendations in the Scottsdale area. My boyfriend and I are traveling there for the waste management. This is our first trip together as a couple. Whoa. So I'm super stoked. Big move, yeah. We are from the West Loop in Chicago and often venture out to nice dinners. Also, this being my first time to Scottsdale, Phoenix area, curious any fun date night options you and Maria enjoy doing. I've been tuning into Colin religiously. I would say that weekend's tough in in terms of getting these reservations. For my money, Dominic's is the best steakhouse in North Scottsdale, and that's where Waste Management is. And I don't know if you're staying up, on this end of Scottsdale. It's on the basically the opposite end of Old Town Scottsdale, which is closer to Tempe. But I would get on those reservations immediately. There are Mastro's. There's one in North Scottsdale. There's a Mastro's Ocean Club, which is close to TPC. I mean, these are awesome, nice, elite steakhouses. Uh, Date night. There is a really cool bar behind the Waste Management at a hotel called the Princess. It's kind of outside. It's just an excellent spot. And there is a restaurant in the Princess, which is a hotel that backs up to TPC Scottsdale, which is called La Hacienda. It's a Mexican restaurant, but it's kind of like an upscale Mexican restaurant. It's legit. So I would say Dominic's, Mastro's Ocean Club, La Hacienda, Preston Steakhouse. It's not too far away from me. It's not bad, not bad. If you're in Old Town, the Mission is just an awesome spot. It's kind of like it's Mexican food, but great margaritas, just cool jam. I went. I mean, one of my favorite restaurants. That place kind of got famous when the dude Biz from Barstool got in a fight with those Irish gypsies, and he fought like 10 of them. Houston's. I used to live right next to it. I went there all the time. That place is bomb. Huge fan. NorCal guy. I'm 19 and started listening in 2023 when I needed my dad to respect my football knowledge. I feel like Jayden Daniels is the truth. And according to Google, he's 6'4", 210 pounds. I think if he doesn't fill out his frame more, these defenses are going to figure him out as more film rolls in. And he's going to start talking or taking some big hits right now. When you're young in certain frames, like it's hard to put on weight. Like it is going to be a difficult proposition for Jayden to ever be built like he's Cam Newton. Like your frame's kind of your frame. Lamar Jackson is never going to be some jacked up thick guy, right? When you look at, Mahomes or Josh Allen are just a little thicker. Now they're also, I guess they're similar age to Lamar. But like your body type's kind of your body type. Like Devontae Smith is never going to weigh 210 pounds. He's always going to be 175, right? So Jayden can get a little thicker, more muscle, but his frame's his frame. Like it kind of is what it is. To me, where he's got to get smart, and Lamar is elite at this, is if you're not going to be a slider, you got to do the plop. And Lamar just does these like little plops when he gets near kind of chaos. Jayden's got a little. When I was in Philly, Michael Vick was reckless. Now it was awesome to watch because he was tough and he was fearless. But when you're getting hurt a lot, fearless becomes reckless. And Jayden has to be very, very careful diving and jumping. Um, but like I don't think he's ever going to be body type's kind of his body type because he's not. It's not a 20-year-old guy. I mean, this guy's been in college for like 6 years, and I think they feed you pretty well at LSU. Why isn't McCarthy getting more interviews? All he does is win. And if the Saints hired him, they would have the best coach in the division. And if the Jaguars hired him, it would almost guarantee to save Trevor Lawrence. How say you? It's funny, perception can be a real thing. And for whatever reason, for a guy that has won a lot of games and is a Super Bowl champ, and he's not, I mean, how old is Mike McCarthy? 60? So it's not like he's Pete Carroll, 73 years old. His career record's 174 and 112. He's won 11 playoff games. His winning percentage is over 600. In this century, he has 3 12-win seasons. Just turned 2025. But he's kind of, I just don't think he's viewed like his record. Fair or not. I mean, honestly, yeah, I thought he had a pretty good run in Dallas. He clearly had an awesome run in Green Bay. But people go, oh, it's Aaron Rodgers. This is all Rodgers. What do they say about Dallas? No one wins there. Dude won 12 games 3 years in a row. When's the last time the Cowboys did that? The 90s? I don't think they have anything near that this century. I mean, up until 2021, they hadn't had back-to-back winning seasons since 1995, 1996. Think about that. So when they were good in the mid 90s, 91 through 96, 11, 13, 12, 12, 10. Starting in 1997 till Mike McCarthy showed up, they did not have back-to-back double-digit winning seasons. He had three straight. So I'm sorry, like you could argue Mike's better than the Cowboys because the Cowboys had a million coaches during that time. Parcells, Garrett, you name it. Wade Phillips, none of them could win back-to-back double-digit games. It's not that difficult. Huge fan. I'm an Alabama fan. And while the season was disappointing, I have a more optimistic outlook going forward than a lot of Bama fans do. I think we have a great coach and great recruiting infrastructure. And they are still one of the most attractive destinations for high school and transfers. I do worry, however, about the NIL situation. We have a harder time getting funding for our collective, and not only do a lot of Northern and West Coast schools, but even SEC competitors like Texas, Georgia, and A&M. While I think we'll always be one of the better schools in the country, do you think the NIL issues could prevent Bama, as well as some other lower funding SEC schools, from being able to re-enter the national championship contender? Let me just say this where I think you're wrong. You said a comment like, I think we are still one of the most attractive destinations for high school kids. That doesn't exist anymore. There's no like, forever if you wanted, there were destinations, right? If you wanted to work in country music, you moved to Nashville. If you wanted to work in Hollywood, you moved to LA. And those were just attractive places, right? Hell, think about in the last 4 years, the places that have boomed, right? Vegas, Scottsdale, Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Nashville, Palm Beach, Jupiter, Miami areas, Charlotte, right? They were a destination for human beings. Destinations now in college football have nothing to do with like, you know who used to play here? Or you know how many games we've won? There's one question that gets asked. I would say not 100% of the time, but I think the number's well over 90 to 95%. Well, what's how much are you paying me? So it's like if Alabama's offering a guy $400,000 and a shittier school, let's just pick Alabama. Let's just pick two schools. Alabama against, let's say, Utah. Let's say Utah has more money than Alabama. I'm not saying that's they do. I don't know. I don't have the books. But let's just say Utah is offering the kid $600,000 and Alabama's offering the kid $400,000. Forever it'd be like you go play at Alabama. I think Utah gets that kid 9 out of 10 times now. Or let's use Michigan State and the example you use, and Colin's been hitting on this. And Colin uses like these guys go to the coasts and they work in finance and whatever. I think it's just a simple numbers game that Michigan, obviously Ohio State, Oregon, these schools have more money than the SEC schools, not named Texas and Texas A&M. Maybe Georgia, we're really about to find out. But we just saw Ohio State have the highest paid roster in the country. The only team that was close was Texas, not Alabama, LSU, or Georgia. We saw LSU, and I would put LSU in there with Alabama. Brian Kelly had to give $1 million to the collective because when Underwood needed to pick his school, Michigan gave him all that money because they have an 80-year-old guy named Larry Ellison who cut the check. Like that guy just doesn't exist at Alabama or LSU. I think many would argue that Arkansas, because of Tyson Foods, technically has more money. If you gave DeBoer $20 million to play with, I think Alabama would win a national championship or compete to win one. But if let's just say, and again, no one really knows these numbers, but let's just say he's got 10 and the top 6, 7 programs are between 15 to 20, you're at a major disadvantage. And just because Saban rattled off championships, no one gives a shit that all those sweet that Minka Fitzpatrick, Quinnen Williams, Julio Jones. Okay, awesome. How much are you paying me? Which I like. There's just a very capitalistic, I don't know, nature to the business now. Is capitalistic a word? The just cutthroat business nature of college sports, which in basketball has always been like that. Like, why do you think Duke and Kentucky were getting all the star players? Nothing comes for free. Nothing good comes for free, besides love. I think you guys are in trouble. I think any school without a ton of money is in trouble. So you could argue that it just becomes the top 5 or 6 NIL teams are going to consistently be in the final four, at least final eight. And you kind of, Alabama didn't have to get lucky before. They got the best players. Georgia and Alabama for like, the last decade got the best players. LSU had the 1 year, but it was basically them. Clemson had a couple years. That would never happen today. There's no way Saban is elite. Saban wouldn't have been able to land all those guys because he wouldn't have the money. I loved Alabama under Saban. I became a pretty diehard SEC game or SEC guy. I watched most of their games, right? Not just Alabama, but all the big SEC games. I thought it was the best product. If it shifts, like I won't watch as much. I still think the conference is going to be awesome because the vibe at the games are elite. They care so much, and they'll do whatever they can to raise the money. But how do you go up against the money of Ohio State, the money of Oregon? If USC can ever get their head out of their ass, USC, they just got more money than you. I'll tell you the sleeper is fucking Notre Dame. Do you know how much money that school has? Do you know how many boosters with unlimited cash are going to want to be a huge part of the program now that they can directly, and Marcus Freeman is much more likable than Brian Kelly and proves that he can win? Watch out for Notre Dame. Huge Bucks fan. I just wanted to get your thoughts and maybe an outside view of the future of Baker in Tampa. I feel like that we are consistently portrayed as a 5-win team in all the preseason. And when we do make the playoffs for the fifth straight year, that's when the national media loves to come out. Just want your thoughts. Well, it's partly your division. It's pretty awful. It's really bad. I mean, it's just not a fun division to watch. I mean, the Saints are putrid. The Falcons are kind of an embarrassment. And the Carolina Panthers, up until the last second half of the year, had been one of the rough couple year stretches I can ever remember. So your division flies a little under the radar. Your head coach is not. It's funny with Todd. Like that guy was a badass safety in the pros. And if you ever, most people probably listening haven't met Todd, but obviously safeties are. If you meet a safety from like the '80s or the '90s, I worked with one in Lewis Riddick, who you see on ESPN. I was around Todd Bowles with the Eagles. I spent a lot of time around the Niners and seeing John Lynch. Safeties back in the day are fucking massive. Todd Bowles is a big ass dude. If you played safety back in the day, safeties were bigger. Like if you just see Todd Bowles or Lewis Riddick standing next to a linebacker nowadays, a lot of times they're bigger. John Lynch is bigger than some 49er linebackers, or every bit. Maybe not now. He's like 55 years old, but I'm just saying, like height. These safeties are 6'2", 6'3". They look different, and they hit hard. Like you got killed back in the day. Yet Todd's personality, sometimes I'm jealous as someone that can get a little emotional. When just in life, it's like calm down a little bit. Todd's very mellow. And I think sometimes when you're mellow, Dan Campbell hit the scene. Like people followed the Lions pretty closely because he was such a just magnetic figure. You're like, what Dan Campbell say? You just Todd's not really like that. And even Baker, who was once like that, I would say is really mellowed down. So really the faces of your program in the NFL typically are your coach and your quarterback. And I would say Todd Bowles is one of the more understated coaches, head coaches in the NFL by a wide margin. And I think Baker's become really, really quiet, which is a good thing if you're Jason Light and Todd Bowles. What should the Saints do in order to get back into contention ASAP? Is that something feasible in 25? Should we accept the idea? Clean house. Yeah, I think nuclear option. Blow that bitch up. I think you have so many financial issues. I mean, no team robs Peter to pay Paul like the Saints. I mean, every single year up against it, up against it, up against it. And this Derek Carr thing, like he's going to be your quarterback next year. Known Derek a long time, but he's lost his mojo, man. He just hasn't played well for a while. And the other thing with Derek is he kind of gets injured a lot now. But it doesn't make any fun. You just roll him back. But the problem is if Derek's your quarterback, now I don't know if it's feasible that he's going to play 17 games anymore. But he's going to. I just think that it's going to be hard to get a top couple pick with if he plays most of the games. Now, if he gets injured and you got to play Spencer Rattler or Hayner, I like Jake too, Fresno State guy, but just quarterback situation's not great. Team's not great. Just issues. I don't know what else to say. We'll end on this. Charger fan, stoked we got Jimmy Harbaugh. Year one was above my expectations, even though we had a rough ending. Going forward, what do you think are the realistic chances we ever win a Super Bowl? I think if Jim Harbaugh's your coach, you have a good chance to win a Super Bowl in the next several years. 1,000%. Khalil Mack, I saw today, said he wants to come back. Would not shock me at all if they re-sign Khalil Mack to a one-year deal. I would imagine Jim Harbaugh likes Khalil Mack. Same with Jesse Minter. Now, maybe Khalil Mack wants to leave. I don't see why he would. Uh, Obviously, depending on money. I think there are a couple keys to the draft for the Chargers, which is something they just need to get for Herbert moving forward. A weapon that can either be a tight end or a wide receiver. I think they would be more inclined, if you tell me they draft one of those two in the first round, I think they'd be more inclined to draft a tight end. Though, Harbaugh and Baalke took a wide receiver, I think his second year uh, in the first round. Turned out to be a bust, A.J. Jenkins from Illinois, but they did. But I could see them taking a tight end or a wide receiver high and a running back on the second day. And this draft is littered with running backs. So if they can hit on those, when Harbaugh got hired with the 49ers, one underrated thing they did is they hit on some free agents. They signed Carlos Rogers, who was playing with the Redskins, and he became a Pro Bowl corner for them. Uh, they signed, I'm trying to think, Dante Whitner. They just signed some players that just became impact players for them. So I think this offseason could be about just signing a couple low budget guys that can become impact players and then nail some draft picks. Harbaugh has a long history of doing that. I think offensively, the offensive line you feel good about, the quarterback you feel good about, Lad McConkey you feel good about. Now, can you get a Tyler Warren? I think Michigan's tight end's pretty good. Obviously, Jim's going to know him, or a wide receiver to go with McConkey, and then draft a running back. That to me is the best plan moving forward. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon.